you all. This is With You Through the Night, which is a promise or a threat. It's like lighthouses, isn't it? The idea of one lonely bloke sitting in a pool of light with darkness on all sides, keeping watch. But they're all automated now, and radio stations are the same. Generally, that is. CBT-FM is one of the very few local radio stations that still has an overnight presenter. Most so-called local stations are part of big media groups, and they save money and reinforce their brand identity by having a centralised automated service overnight. I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, it's just the way things are and how things change. They make sure you get the station identity and local adverts so it still sounds local, you're still listening to your station, but mostly you're listening to something that's generated from London or Nottingham or Bristol. And if you're driving across the country at night, you'll hear the same songs and the same voices giving you the same news bulletins from coast to coast. CBT-FM is, as I say, different. I knew even at the time that I was acting out a cliche, but when I was a young lad, I used to listen under the bedclothes with an earphone. I don't think I needed to, because no one actually cared whether I was asleep or listening to the radio. But I liked the idea that I was being cunning and rebellious. I liked Radio Luxembourg best, even though it insisted on referring to itself as Fab 208, because it sounded American to me. In the 70s, we thought that made things cool. Then around the time my mum and dad died, I found a station I liked better. It seemed more me. Not as grimly wacky as Fab 208 and Emperor Roscoe, and without its constant dribble of vapid pop and cover versions that were geriatric even then. Not so many of those tissue-frail mime artists of the era that we now know as boy bands. CBT-FM played all kinds of music, even punk sometimes. Like all the other stations, they never really took the music seriously, but the main thing was they played it, and sometimes they had interesting things to say. Some of those punk rockers really know how to express themselves, don't they? That's the Damned and Smash It Up. I'm sure they felt better once they got all that out of their systems. I didn't mind when the DJs pretended to be daft. I could see the difference between being funny as a way to say something and trying to be funny because you thought it'd make people like you. I tried being funny, like the best DJs, but often if people laughed, like my grandmother and her friends, I wasn't sure what they were laughing at. I just joined in so they could say they were laughing with me, not laughing at me. It didn't really make people like me any better, but it helped me understand poor old Emperor Roscoe. How about something for a rainy evening at home with a book? Here's Kate Bush with Wuthering Heights. Can anything else wuther apart from heights? Or maybe the wind? Imagine going to the shops to get some wuthering vegetables. I learned a lot from the radio as well. I didn't know Wuthering Heights was a book before. I only ended up reading it because of Kate Bush. I learned about the world from the news. David Bowie taught me that the point of life wasn't to try and look like an ordinary person, so you wouldn't get noticed. I started to see that quiet wasn't the same as good. I learned about love and pain and emotions from the songs. No one bothered talking to me much, so the radio was sort of my friend. And I liked listening to the Clash and the Undertones. Their anger and joy and massive directionless enthusiasm made me think that maybe I wasn't the only person who thought the way I did. I understood for the first time that there were other places and other people and other ways to live, not just the ones I knew. My ways didn't seem right anyway. I only knew what my grandmother told me, and as I began to notice the rest of the world, I started to think she might be mad, or just very old. I was the only person I knew with no parents, and it made the other kids scared of me. I was odd and bullied. My only friends were the DJs and the dead. The main thing about my radio station, though, was the phone-ins. They didn't have them on the other stations, or at least not the same sort. I wasn't sure where they got the people from, if they were actors or real, or if I was imagining it all. I dreaded hearing them, but I always made myself listen, and I was always glad I had. I used to try telling people about them, but they just thought I was talking rubbish. When people didn't understand me, they always used to assume I was making things up. It was really hard to get people to listen to me in those days. Mind you, because I learned everything off the radio, it was difficult not to talk like a presenter a lot of the time. And no one wants to listen to a 13-year-old boy talking about hot hits and things coming at you. One day I was thinking about killing myself and what that would be like. And then I thought that maybe I could be on the radio instead. At first I was scared just because I'd had the idea I could feel my heart shaking. But logically, the people on the radio were still people, like me, or a bit like me. So maybe I could think of a way to start. There weren't media studies courses in those days. You used a shoebox cassette recorder and a C60 tape to record yourself talking over the intro to Living Thing by ELO. You'd be very careful with that apostrophe, make sure people heard it. That's the sort of thing that got you noticed. I don't know where I got this information from, but I was sure of it. You carry on with the rest like that with the rest of the tape. That was the Bee Gees, here's the Goombay Dance Band sort of thing, till you'd filled one side. Then you wrapped it in paper, put it in an envelope, and drew a few stars on it in felt tip. Enough to make it stand out, but not so many that they didn't take you seriously. It was a fine line. Then you pretended you weren't thinking about it every waking second, until a few weeks later, when you really did forget about it. And that's how I got started in radio, on the same station that had made my adolescence bearable. I answered the phone at my grandmother's house one day, and it was someone asking for Terry Craig, so I knew it was them straight away. I didn't give them my real name, which used to be Nigel, because I'd noticed that a lot of presenters have reversible names. James Andrews, Andrew James, Graham Collins, Colin Graham. Not sure why that is, but Terry Craig seemed more radio than Nigel Spooner. So I thought, why not? I was glad of the change. It was the station director who rang me, and he asked me to come in for an interview. I didn't go to sixth form that day, and I never went back. I wasn't really clever enough for English literature, and I never regretted abandoning it. I used to have to work so hard just to keep up with the others who seemed to be able to think without using their brains. Maybe it was because I wasn't really encouraged to think before then. People seemed to like it better if I thought what I was told to think. I think the teachers tolerated me because I had problems at home and assumed that was why I found it, but maybe I was just thick. It stopped mattering that day anyway. We think you've got something special that really fits the voice of this station. We get hundreds of applications, but most people don't quite get what we do. You understand how it works here. That's what they said after I'd stammered and sweated my way through the interview in my funeral suit. I think they felt sorry for the orphan. But I was 17, and after a couple of weeks of on-the-job training with the avuncular and cheerful Breakfast Bill, I had my own radio programme to present. From the moment late night lounge finished at midnight till early breakfast at 5. 3 o'clock in the morning is like being dead. You're moving in a shadow world where you can't see who you're talking to, and most people will never see you. Most people have experienced it, but can't truly remember what it's like. It's silent and inevitable and dreaded 3 o'clock in the morning. You know it's coming, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's the time for finally deciding that the party's over and nothing new's going to happen. It's for getting up and going to the toilet with enough bits of dream left caught in your head to make you think your bathroom's full of clockwork spiders. It's for lying awake as still as you can make yourself, listening to the World Service, or for suddenly being fired out of sleep, terrified. It's for being sick with excitement of catching a plane to a beach, or scoured with disbelief in a hospital. No normal human activity takes place at 3 AM. I like it. Even after all these years, going to work at midnight and finishing at dawn feels a bit special, like I'm going somewhere new. And I'm performing a valuable service, just like the coppers and the nurses and the security guards who share my shifts. I've given up any prospect of normal life I might have had to do something that no one else can do. Talking to people in the night and giving them that circle of light so they've got something to steer by. That's quite important, I think. And of course, there's the phone in. It was really hard to get used to doing that phone in. But really, it's the best part of the show for me, and the bit people tune in for. The first time I did it, I was absolutely terrified. I still get nervous now. Not everyone on the line makes a lot of sense. They're not the people that serve you in shops or process your insurance claims or teach your kids. They talk about things I never knew existed. Some of them have stories that would break your heart 1,000 times over. Some are aggressive or rude or don't seem to know many words. Most of them, though, just want to say something to our tiny part of the world, a connection to life, because I don't think they're all completely with us. I try not to say too much back. It's not about me after all. I can do my talking at any old time, in between the records. They're not records now, of course, but we still call them tracks. They're not even things you can see anymore. I miss the smell of vinyl and the feel of taking a record out of its sleeve, but in a way, this suits me better. The songs are just songs, things you can't see or smell or touch or break. Just like the listeners, just like me and my voice. If you're passing through our area, why not try tuning in? CBTFM might not be your style, but one day you'll need it. And when you do, you'll find it. Everyone does.